This is the Horse Radio Network.
You're listening to The Stall and Stable Show, ideas for happy horsekeeping.
In this sixth installment of the HRN Host series on happy horsekeeping, I have the pleasure of talking with the legendary Shawna Karrasch, the trainer responsible for bringing positive reinforcement to the horse world. Shawna is the host of Equine Clicker 101 on the Horse Radio Network, the author of You Can Train Your Horse to Do Anything, and in general, a pretty fabulous human being. And if you know me, you know I don't make those kinds of statements lightly. Today, Shawna and I talk about the different ways clicker training can help us keep our horses happier at home or while boarding. From leading quietly without a chain to good behavior for the farrier, trailer loading, and more. This is an episode you do not want to miss. So listen in. This is episode 89 of the Stall and Stable Show, brought to you by Lucas Equine Equipment, makers of premium quality stall components and accessories. Whether you're building a new barn or renovating an old one, Lucas Equine is the company you can trust for quality, reliability, and beautiful style. To learn more, go to stallandstable.com and click on the Lucas Equine banner. Welcome back, listeners, and Happy New Year! Today is Wednesday, January 12th, 2022. I'm your host, Helena Harris. I'd like to start the first episode of the new year with a big thank you to our sponsors, including Tangent Materials, makers of Tangent Fencing, and American Harvest Hemp Products for horses. I'd also like to thank those of you who've signed up to become Stall and Stable friends. Be sure to visit stallandstable.com and click on the Friends link to listen to the Who Hollow Chronicles, as well as to get updates on what's happening with Susie, Brody, and our new adoptee, Miss Clarabelle. So, you've heard this before, but I'll say it again. As the saying goes, if you ask 10 different horse people how to do something, you'll get 10 different answers. Well, I decided to put that adage to the test and ask 10 different horse people their opinions about what qualifies for happy horsekeeping. The 10 people happen to be my Horse Radio Network colleagues, all horse professionals in some way, shape, or form, and all with a similar horse-first philosophy when it comes to keeping, training, and competing their horses. This week, I am delighted to welcome Shawna Karrasch. Shawna is a positive reinforcement trainer and animal behaviorist. She's renowned for being a pioneer in the use of positive reinforcement training with horses. Shawna began her career working with large marine mammals. When introduced to the world of show jumping, Shawna immediately saw how reward-based training, also known as positive reinforcement, R+, or clicker training, could be used to engage the horse's willingness in equestrian pursuits. A number of years ago, top trainer John Madden was so impressed with Shawna's early results that the world-renowned training facility at the Madden farm soon became the testing ground for adapting positive reinforcement for horses. Right? So if you're going to have some guinea pigs, the Maddens are pretty nice guinea pigs to have. By using Shawna's training methods, one of our favorite Olympians, BZ Madden, taught her famous show jumper Judgment to overcome his fear of water. BZ's spectacular success over the years as a top competitor on several great horses is a testament not only to her extraordinary skill as a rider, but also in part to the reward-based training system that Shawna first developed at the Madden farm. Shawna's infectious enthusiasm, sense of humor, years of training experience, and wonderful rapport with both animals and humans makes her one of the finest trainers in North America. Her powerful and humane techniques are an eye-opening experience for equine professionals, competitors, and amateurs. Before we get started with our conversation, we'll take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Tangent Materials. If you're tired of rotting broken fences, it's time to talk to Tangent. If you want perimeter fencing that's safe and durable with a classic style, it's time to talk to Tangent. If you want to spend more time with your horses and less time worrying about your farm, it's time to talk to Tangent Materials, makers of premium HDPE lumber that looks just like wood, but without the worry. To learn more, go to stallandstable.com/fencing. Hi, Shawna, and welcome to Stall and Stable.
Thank you, Helena. It's nice to be here.
I'm so happy to see your smiling face because that smiling face really left me a couple of weeks ago with some very powerful tools and a lot of inspiration. Tell our listeners, for like the two who don't know who you are, tell them about who you are and what you do in the horse industry.
Okay, so my name is Shawna Karrasch. Well, we got that part, I guess. And I learned how to train animals through marine mammals. So all I knew was positive reinforcement training. And that's where I started. And that was a majillion years ago, it seems by now, which is a word. And it was, I worked with whales, dolphins, sea lions, walruses, otters, and that's where I was. And so then as I looked into, and I've, kind of a past, and, that might be another episode, but as I looked into horses, I realized I didn't know anything about positive reinforcement. So I started looking into it with horses, and I naively thought, boy, horse people are going to be so excited when they find out about positive reinforcement. Well, 28 years later now, we're still struggling along those lines, but we're getting there. People are getting aware. So I really focus on the positive reinforcement, how to incorporate it into everything from groundwork to under saddle work, from babies to retirees to problem behaviors to teaching new behaviors or just even maintaining old ones. So it's applicable for everything.
Well, I thought I knew a thing or two about clicker training and positive reinforcement, but I didn't. I thought, oh, okay, you click, you create an association with a behavior and a reward, and you're good to go. But there's so many nuances to it, and I think now that I'm entering this world as a novice, I'm beginning to see how many layers there are, how far you can go, how complex you can make it. Oh, I don't want to say complex, but how far you can go with it, right? And today we're going to talk about, since this series, this Stall and Stable series, is about horse keeping and how we can create better environments for our horses. I want to ask you some questions about how we can use clicker training and positive reinforcement to make our horses easier to handle in the barn on our properties, and whether that's for the backyard horse owner who's got a small property or in a boarding facility. So, what kinds of ground handling behaviors or things can we use positive reinforcement for?
And I think it's it's a good question, and we can use it for everything. I mean, that sounds like, yeah, of course you can, Miss Clicker Trainer Lady, but you truly can, because it's just behavior. It's behavior that they're already learning through. We're just stepping in to implement and influence their choices. So it's for everything. But I think some of the things that strike me the most, it's leading, leading in and out, the leading calmly. My biggest pet peeve is when horses cut in front of me and cut me off. Ugh. That's just my,
especially because we're little.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, big horse. Human here.
All I see is your neck. Well, now where am I supposed to go? So that's kind of been one that I've really focused on because it's just one of those things. I want them in step with me, not making up their own thing. But it's also husbandry behaviors are really an easy way, and something that through traditional training isn't really as easy to use. So there's a number of things, but I think the leading and the problems that can come with it, as well as the little impulse control, which goes throughout all of it, and then some of the husbandry behaviors, whether it's routine things or veterinary procedures, I think those are all really powerful and rather easy to change their neural pathways to get a more engaged and working with you and choosing to cooperate with you.
I was doing some reading recently about dominance, and I kind of questioned recreational hunting and was looking into why people do it, why human beings do it. And the underlying theme there is dominance, how we work with animals, control animals, how we get a sense of accomplishment through dominance. And I know with horses, the theme all along has been dominate the animal, simply because they're so big and they're so fast. And dominance is kind of built into our DNA. But also built into our DNA is empathy and compassion and thoughtfulness. Let me give you a scenario. Maybe you can help me out with, point us in the right direction. Let's say we have a horse who's new to a boarding facility, and it's like a kind of a big barn, a 20-stall barn, let's say, and it's really busy, and there's lessons and all kinds of stuff, and this horse is new. And they come in off the trailer, right? The trainer leads them through. Maybe they might be a little up or excited, and they have a halter with a chain, and they go into their stall, and they put their head down, and they start eating their hay, if we're lucky, right?
Mm-hmm.
How might clicker training help a horse like that acclimate into a new environment, new friends? Give us just some ideas on how we might be able to use positive reinforcement in that situation.
Okay. And this is one of my passions, honestly. So, and you also tapped into it saying it can be as simple. I mean, it's very simple, the premise, but the changes are complex and just go on further and further and further. So we're really going to change emotional states behind everything they get exposed to the more we do. So let's look at your typical horse. Horses typically are called or referred to as neophobic. So they look at new things and go, new things, new sights, new sounds, new situations, they're threatening to them. And so they look at them and think, uh-oh, what danger does this present? And that's normal. But what we want to do is teach them, and we can do this through positive reinforcement and through something called classic conditioning or association, is teaching them that new sights, sounds are potential for good things, for reinforcement, but on a primal kind of level, it's endorphins and dopamines then become part of seeing a new thing. They're thinking, oh, what's that? And they're engaging their curiosity as opposed to thinking, oh dear, do I fight or flight? What do I do here? Do I need to get out of here? Instead, they're like, what is that? I want to see that. So if we set that groundwork, which isn't so hard to do, but it does take a little bit of patience to do it, but it's fun. The horses love it. If we set that groundwork before we ever took them to that barn, we're going to have them going, wow, what is this? And we're going to have endorphins and dopamines and confidence and being settled and being attentive and impulse control and all those pieces that make it a seamless transition. But let's say we know we're going to go there and we're doing it kind of on, I'm doing this in 2 weeks and I haven't really started this foundation yet. I haven't done all this. So what am I going to do? And I would start using the clicker. So the clicker tells them, yes, what you've just done is correct. So that's a really important part of it. So when the horse is looking around and looking worried and it looks back to you for a minute, you can go, yep, that's a piece I like. Don't worry about that other stuff. Focus on me and we can work together, because then they're making a choice to focus on you as opposed to getting fixated on scary, worry things. Is we start that and we can click those different pieces and say good, or that moment they take a breath and they soften a bit and you go, that's it, relax. And relaxation is something that I think I want to work on all the time. Even if I want an energetic thing, I want it done with relaxation. So a jump is much nicer when it's a relaxed jump versus a tense jump, or even a pee off, which if that's where I wanted to go, relax is better.
Relaxed is better. Which reminds me, we're going to hear from our newest sponsor, American Harvest Naturals, hemp products for horses. The story of American Harvest begins in the summer of 2016, when they established an agricultural processing facility in eastern Montana. As the market for American crops struggled during trade wars with Asia, American Harvest partnered with farmers to identify sustainable crops that could strengthen the farming economy and provide unique benefits to consumers. That's when American Harvest and their farming partners started processing high-protein crops, including hemp. Today, American Harvest makes super high-quality, broad-spectrum hemp and CBD products for both humans and horses. Their CBD oil is directly extracted from the hemp plant and includes all of its natural components, but without THC and without being subjected to any chemical processing. This truly all-natural hemp extract helps your horse maintain a supportive sense of calm, mitigating day-to-day stress, recovery from exercise-induced inflammation, and encourages healthy sleep cycles, something that's important for all mammals. If you'd like to learn more about how American Harvest equine hemp can help your horse, go to www.ahihemp.com. That's ahihemp.com. So we can create relaxation, or rather we can, you mentioned neural pathways. So
Yes.
impulse control, relaxation, by creating an association with a click. So, and listeners, this conversation is going to assume you know a little bit about clicker training and positive reinforcement and bridge signals and all that. So I'm going to have you do your homework and then come back and listen to the rest of this podcast. So in creating that association, or what you call reinforcement history, when we bring a horse into a new environment or we introduce him to something new, does that reinforcement history become familiar? So when he's in a new situation and we've got the click and we take up the positive reinforcement, he goes, oh, that's something familiar. Therefore, this new thing isn't so scary because it's actually paired with something that is already familiar.
Yes, that's exactly it. And
Okay.
not only is it familiar, it's associated with good things. So they're
Right.
like,
Okay.
oh, it's my click. I love my click. And the target, which is teaching them to touch their nose to a target, is another element that they can see it. And you ask them to target, and they're like, oh, all the good stuff is here with me, and we're doing this good stuff. So by establishing some familiar pieces and bringing them into this new place, we have a way to go, all the good stuff happens. It's endorphins, it's dopamine, it's familiarity, it's comfort, and you're not being, dropped off into some strange abyss. We're going to help you to say, yep, we're good. We're going to do those things. And it would be the same as taking them to a show. I would do the same thing and say, you know what? We're going to go to our new stall, and here's a target, and here's a clicker. And, meanwhile, they're hearing all these other scary, announcers or, flags and banners and awnings or whatever it is. And so bringing the familiar pieces brings that emotional state with it. So as they see that, and they're like, I love the target, and I love the clicker, and I love doing this training. And you say, well, good, because it's here with us. And it's a way to really transition. So that's exactly it.
So I have been listening to your podcast episode by episode. I went from episode 2 and then I jumped ahead to 49. And it was like, you need to go back to episode 2. So I was listening to the episodes, and you made a great point that helped me overcome a block that I had with my mare. And that was to find a place where your horses are relaxed and comfortable so that they can learn. And rather than taking your horse out and starting to do this clicker training when they, like at dinner time, or when their friend just left for a show, when their energy or their impulses might be up, not the best time to try to teach them to relax, but to start by creating an association with good things when they are already relaxed. So let's say we've got this horses, and again, I'm going back to this boarding barn situation, and we have an owner or even one of the staff members who has a horse that might be difficult to lead. If that person wants to start working with this horse so they're more relaxed when they're handled, give us a scenario on how they might set up a relaxed space and when they might start this clicker training.
There's so many pieces to it. Sometimes I forget the significance of the pieces. So it's good that you're a great student. But yeah, so really trying to create that relaxed environment. Because if you think about it, if they're in fight or flight and they're like, oh no, what's this? Am I going to have to leave? They're not all there. They're not all present. They're worried about the fear factor of it all. And neurobiology, which is really caught up, has shown when we use traditional training, it lights up a part of the brain that's responsible for fight or flight. Positive reinforcement tends to light up a part of the brain that's responsible for what they refer to as a seeking system. So one, as cortisol is produced in that part of the brain, the other has the endorphins and dopamines. So when they're in that cortisol place, they are thinking fight, flight, freeze, what am I going to do with this? And they're on high alert. They're not connected. They're not slowing down. They're not feeling safe enough to maximize their learning. So by going back to the comfortable place, the most relaxed place, the place where they can focus the most is ideal. And so even just this last week, a couple of days ago, was doing a clinic, and the horse had worry about bigger issues, about, they want to do working equitation where they have like obstacles and things. And she wanted to go to that. And I said, no, we're not ready for that. That's far too big. We're going to put him over his fear threshold for sure. We want to just tap into a little bit and say, can you deal with it a little bit, and can I get you to come back? So they can start learning to re-engage with us and the safety that comes with it. So in starting a new horse, I want to go to where I think they're going to be the most comfortable. And ideally, I would like them to have been there a little bit so they're even a little bored, So
Yeah.
if I've turned them out, okay. And I would do them individually because all the horses will find this quite interesting. And now you're going to have a whole nother social dynamic. So you don't want to do that part. But if they're turned out in the paddock and they're comfortable there, I will give them, an hour or two so that they're kind of like, yeah, I'm out here and I'm grazing and I'm kind of over it. So when I come in, they're like, hey, it's nice to see you. Let's begin. But being in a stall is a great place to do it because usually that is a very quiet, very focused, not a lot of distractions around them. So that's where I start is the place I think they're going to be the most comfortable and the most relaxed. Now, just because we've set them up for success and started there, ultimately, I want to be able to do this any place, anytime, anywhere, but we'll start with tools that can help get success as we build this foundation. And the more they get into the training, one of the things you'll hear me say a lot is slow down, you'll go faster. Because
Yes.
if you slow down and build a foundation and take the time, even though it doesn't feel like maybe it's attached to anything else, it will be. Then in the long run, you have a horse who learns so much faster because they're problem solving with you. They're invested in the training. They're excited about the training and they're thinking, what could the answer be? And that's a great place to be. Instead of thinking, oh, what's going to happen? They are right there with you trying to kind of come up with the right answer.
And I like the fact that you said that it's okay to start in the stall because it is a place that they're going to spend a lot of time, especially if they're in a boarding facility. It keeps you safe so that you've got this barrier in case it's a horse you don't know very well. But it's really easy to just click and feed to establish the bridge there. You can just be standing there, right, on the other side in order to start the basics of this process.
Yes. And sometimes with certain horses or certain people, depending on how well you know the horse or how comfortable you are with the horse, sometimes I will be in protected contact where I might just be on the outside of a fence or outside of their stall door and reaching over and feeding them. If I'm pretty comfortable with a horse and I feel like I know what I'm doing enough, I'm going to be right in with them and sorting those pieces out. But again, it's a place that can create protected contact. And sometimes it's helpful for the horse. Sometimes it's helpful for you, but it minimizes activity too. They're not running in their stall typically. And if they are kind of running in their stall at that point, I might give them a moment. I might throw some hay down and see if I can't get them to let go of all that activity and get to a quieter place so that I can feel safer so that they can slow down and relax and focus with it.
Right. And they need to be present. They need to be in a mental space to learn so that they can learn how to become less high strung.
Yes,
eventually.
Exactly. And I love the high strung horses. I mean, I like energy. I like big personality, but I want to bring it down where we have some impulse control.
Okay. So one of the things that's kind of troubling to me, but I know that a lot of people think it's necessary, is when they're bringing horses in from turnout, especially at dinner time, especially high-strung horses with a lot of energy or anxious horses, and they use a chain. And that happens a lot, especially with off-track thoroughbreds. It's very effective. It hurts, but it's effective because it hurts. But it's not necessary, and we can get rid of the chain and the shank. How long do you think it would take if someone was working with a horse once a day even, or twice a day with clicker training? How long do you think it would take someone to help a horse relax so they could get rid of that chain?
It can happen surprisingly fast. When I was working with John and Beezy Madden, there was a horse there. Now, he had the basic foundation. So he had 15 minutes a day, so 3 5-minute sessions a day for a week. So he had this foundation already on him. But he was one that when you got close to the paddock, he started running. So everybody would end up water skiing, basically being led around. And I remember them asking, how long do you think it'll take? And I'd never done this because I was still now a marine mammal trainer working with horses. So I was like, I don't know. And Vinton, my husband at the time, said, oh, probably a month. And I was like, oh, no, it'll be a week. And it was less than a week. Now, granted, he had that foundation, but
Right.
we gave him a reason to want to listen. Because before that, he was like, I just want to go. I feel like running, so I'm going to do it. And he was a thoroughbred, a big thoroughbred. And when we slowed it down and gave him a reason to want to do it, pretty soon he's like, well, why would I want to run? I want to do this. I'll have plenty of time to run. So it's a methodical process. I think this is the part that's a little, people forget. It is a systematic process we go to try to build up the new response. Because that's what we're doing, is teaching new choices. But absolutely, we can teach them to get past the chain and get past the equipment. Now, I know safety is first and foremost, so we must be safe. And if something turned on me quick, I'm going to do what I need to do to be safe. But I may step out and go, okay, I need to rethink this because I shouldn't have found myself in that position. But let's say a horse comes to you and they're already there and you're thinking, okay, how do I trust you enough to make this step? And so I would do something like liberty leading and being sure that you're saying, can you be, and that's like episode 2 of the podcast, but go back and say, can you walk with me? Can you stop with me? Can you focus with me? Can you settle with me? And then I would kind of start practicing with a lead rope, not going out to the really challenging places yet, but say, can we walk around and let this lead rope be an incidental? So not pulling on the lead rope, which is so hard to do, and to break that habit, to trust the training, but to then start saying, can you pay attention to me? And it was just this weekend, there was a horse that as she would get going home, she'd start circling because she didn't want to go home. She wanted to continue doing this. And so I said, what we need to do is take just one step at a time. I don't care if it takes 30 minutes to get home at first. If we can go one step at a time and keep that adrenaline on the lower end versus the letting it escalate. So once we let it escalate, now we're kind of in damage control versus saying, hey, I see I got a little too much horse here. Can we work on a downward transition? And you know what we're doing? We're not teaching them, oh, I'm going to control my impulses. They're not thinking through that, but we're making the downward transitions, the quieting and the settling being more reinforcing than the feeling of I want to bolt, I want to run, I want to play, I want to rear, I'm worried. And so we're creating a new association, a new reinforcement history, which then results in more choices, new choices. And I think it's important for people to keep in mind, if any behavior is increasing and then maintaining in frequency, something is reinforcing it. They're getting something they want or avoiding something they don't want. So as we kind of think of it like that, it takes that personalness out of it and start going, okay, this works for you. I get it. I'm empathetic to that. But can I create a new response so that we're all happier and you're going to thrive more in your human-centric world? So it can be really pretty quick when we change it around like that, put something in it for them.
I think that most of the time, horses who provide challenges in handling on the ground, it is because they're confused or they're anxious. And when I say confused, that also means uneducated, so the youngsters as well. I think that the click provides a level of clarity that's really difficult to get in any other training method. And again, listeners, do a little homework. Look up the difference between negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement doesn't mean bad. It doesn't necessarily mean punishment, although it does include punishment. But the click provides so much clarity. So for me, the other types of horsemanship that I've practiced is, natural horsemanship and groundwork, where it's something Shawna calls displacement, when you're using your body language to control the horse or direct the horse. That's negative reinforcement. The pressure is you stepping into the horse's space. So you're displacing them, right? You're pushing them out of the way by stepping into their space. It's not necessarily a negative thing for the horse, but it is, as you said, it does activate different parts of the brain, particularly the fight or flight response. That doesn't mean that the horse is outwardly stressed by what you're doing, but the clarity of the click and then the positive association that goes with it, even when you think it's not helpful, or like, for example, my horses escaped the other day and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get these two? They're like, woohoo. And I had the clicker in my pocket. And I'm like, I don't know what this is going to do, but I know that they associate good things with the click. And I clicked. And both of those horses did an about face, looked at me and said, we're here. What's next? Even though, you could be working on something like liberty leading or standing a stall and impulse control and relaxing, you don't know in what other ways this click, this association can help you. So what other things can we use our clicker for?
And I think that's exactly what you tapped into. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't even recognize this with the marine mammals, because the marine mammals training started and it never stopped. And they had the same consistency through their lives. They had the same consistent trainers and handling. It was with horses, I started going, wow, something else is going on here. This is so much deeper and so much bigger than a means to an end, or just training a behavior or fixing a behavior. It is changing the horse's mental state. And that's the best part of it to me. And the part that changes every other piece that comes from it. Because what is in it for your horse to do a flying lead change? Not a lot, you know?
Right.
And so as we add something in for them, it really changes things. So getting started, and this is also, as we got started with John and Beezy. So that was the first place. I had now bought a horse and decided I'm going to learn how it's done traditionally, so I know what's going on. You know, I'm not going to come in and just change something if I don't even know what's going on. And so I had done everything kind of traditionally as I was learning with my horse. Now I couldn't help but feed him. And it did change, you know, a lot of pieces of him when it was as sloppy as all get out, as far as there's no clicker. But with John and Beezy, when we first worked with them that first week, when John Madden, Beezy's husband, heard about it, he turned a horse around in a day that had a real issue with something. And he said, this is amazing. And if I could get that big of a no to that big of a yes, this quick, come be here, live here, work here, we'll start a business. So I'm living in Southern California. And I go to upstate New York. Sorry about the snort. And I go to upstate New York, and I'm thinking, oh, this is a lot different weather. But that first week, as we worked together, all I did was 3 5-minute sessions a day of the bridge conditioning, the clicker, that Pavlovian conditioning, and I did it in their stalls. And then 3 5-minute sessions a day with the target. So those pieces would be very fundamental pieces. But at the end of the week, Beezy said, and Beezy is not a chatty, superfluous language person. And she said, the horses you're working are remarkably better in the arena. But the training had never interacted yet. You know, we had not, while we would put it with under saddle work, we hadn't yet. I never worked them outside their stall. She never came into the stall. But we had all this improvement for every single one of the horses that was part of it, which I'm sure it was endorphins and dopamine flowing through their system now. But just like you said, it starts changing other parts that we don't know exactly what it'll be, but it starts changing the welfare of the horse, the confidence of the horse. So I would definitely work on the bridge conditioning. Then I would do the target, because the target really helps to create behavior. So even if you think I'm just getting to my flying lead change, I would still teach the target, because it is such a rudimentary and helpful part. And it's another way to deepen the breadth of the training for them, their understanding of it, their reinforcement history of it, where they're like, I love this training. I love it all inside and out. So when we go to the challenging thing and we say, now we're going to work on trailer loading. And they're like, I hate trailer loading. I'm like, I know, we're going to do it in a systematic way. But you have some pieces where they're invested enough in the training. Because if you went right to the issue, they could easily think the clicker represents that trailer, which I hate, and you can poison the whole thing. So you want to kind of go slow and be sure that they understand the training, that we've got a little problem solving and them thinking through it for themselves. And I'll tell you, for horses that have not been given that privilege, there's a lot of horses that are like, I do not do anything until I'm shown exactly what to do, because they don't want any correction. The sensitive horses can be like that. They're like, I'm not going to go right, left until I know exactly what to do. And that's hard. You know, that's kind of a sad thing for me to see. But I get it. This is kind of what we've done. Again, going back to their large animals, it could be kind of scary when we don't know what they're going to do. And we didn't have these tools before. So this is kind of a new awareness for the horse world. But so I would do the bridge conditioning. I do the target. I would do a stationary target. I would do the liberty leading. I might teach them to pick up their leg on their own, you know, so you could point and they just lift it and hold it. All of those things can be working on a little bit of quieting. We can incorporate relaxation into them, and we're giving them choice. Choice has been argued by behaviorists that it can be a primary reinforcer.
So we're talking about the bridge signal, the target, a stationary target. How do we transfer Okay, so an aid or a cue. If we want a horse to do a specific behavior, there's two ways we can do that. We can ask them for the behavior, or we can wait for it to happen and then capture it. Tell us a little bit about that process, the capturing versus the aid. Like we can use voice aids, or how else can we cue a horse to do a behavior that we then want to reinforce?
Yes. And through traditional training, we're using negative reinforcement. So we apply our leg, let's say. If they don't go forward, we apply more leg until they go forward. When they go forward, we then release it. We subtract it. That's the negative portion. Not that it doesn't mean bad. It means a subtraction. So that has become now a cue. And if they stop responding to that cue, we use more aid, and sometimes we're using spur or stick or whatever we need to elicit the correct response. So that's traditional training, and done really well. It works well. But I think the challenge is a lot of people's timing isn't so great, so it doesn't always, and that's just our human nature. Beezy was great to work with because her timing's immaculate, but that's where she's at the Olympics and we're not, and so I think that understanding that can be a little bit of a challenge, but the timing's important no matter which way we go. So now let's say let's say somebody comes to me and they have a horse who will not go forward at all, ever. You've seen those horses that people can beat them. I mean, they can use whips and spurs and whatever. And the horse is like, I am not going forward. It's almost like, well, it's learned helplessness. They've realized it just hasn't worked for them for whatever reason. So now we come about it and we think, okay, we would like you to respond to the lightest little leg pressure or adjustment of our seat even. And so how are we going to get there? And we want to try something else. One of the things that I've dealt with this a lot, but think of this in a broader range than just this picture. This is just an example. I will put a cone with a target in it, and I will teach the horse from the ground to go to that cone. And then I get further and further away. So they're going to the target. They're going to touch the target. They're walking to the target. There's no rider. There's no anything. When I've got them going quite happily past me to the target of their own, I say, now let's do it with a saddle. And then I say, okay, now let's do it with the rider. But rider, you have an association and a reinforcement history that is not desirable. Rider, you're just sitting there being nothing. And so I say, hey, little horse, it's you and I doing what we've always done, that you do so well, that you love to do. And I'll keep using that cone and sending them to the target, the cone with the target. And so now what we're getting a horse who's moving forward, but we haven't incorporated the rider as anything more than just the weight to break that old reinforcement history, that old association, that old conditioned response of And so then I say, when we've got it going as consistent on the ground as it was before a rider's on, I'll start saying, rider, I want you to give a slight little cue with your leg, but quit. No escalating pressure, none of that. You give a cue, and I'm going to back it up immediately with my ground cue, until what we started to create is the horse going, oh, so when I feel that tap, then I go to the target and then I get reinforced. And then I start shifting the food to the rider. So this is kind of a longer, more set problem, so this wouldn't, and you can do this by yourself. You can get on and just say, okay, go to the target, after you've taught them from the ground.
Right.
So that now we've created a new response, but we've used something that they're seeking versus something they're avoiding. So they're seeking the target because it's become conditioned. So they're seeking the food, but they have a new impetus to do it. And interestingly enough, we can use that same target for stopping or slowing down. That horse that goes, it's the timing of when we click. We always want to click on the behavior we want to see more of. So with a horse who doesn't go, we're going to click on the going, and where I feel like we're going to have the apex of the walking, I'm going to click. Even though we may stop before we get there, that's okay. I have cued, let's stop, and you're going to get reinforced, because the clicker, when it's conditioned properly, it says you have just earned some sort of reinforcement. They don't think about the stopping. They think about what earned them the click. What were they doing when that click happened? Then let's say it's a horse who won't stop or slow down. I'm going to click later. I'm going to click as they're approaching the target and slowing down to touch it. And then we could start to incorporate a little bit of, cue for stop or slow down. And again, giving value and salience, giving giving it more meaning. So those cues, which have become desensitized in a lot of horses, now start to have a new meaning for them. So the target really kind of comes into that equation, particularly for tricky situations where we're redoing it. But I like it. If I can teach it all from that place, I know that I'm in a better mental place and I'm building a better association. And positive reinforcement, like any other training, can go wrong. You can do it poorly. If somebody says, I don't like clicker training, I don't want to do it, then you haven't seen it done well. You've seen somebody do it and maybe got poor results, or you kind of thought, oh, I'm going to try it. It seems simple, but there is a little bit more to it. So it's important to follow the steps. So you get those pieces started, and it's to help you avoid the pitfalls, because there are pitfalls just like any other training.
Yeah. And it's usually from going too fast or
yes, and getting too excited, and then they get excited, and yeah.
I'm like, oh, you can lead at my shoulder? Great. Now let's get on a trailer, travel 4 hours and go to a big show. Not really, but you get a little excited. You're like, look what we did together. And then it's very easy to jump ahead 3 or 4 steps and then put both you and your horse over the threshold. So I'm going to do something different, something that I don't usually do with my guests, but I think you have an important message to share. So I'm going to ask you yes or no questions. I'm going to say, can we use clicker training in these scenarios? And you're just going to say yes or no.
Okay.
Okay.
That you know me and my gift of gab, it's going to be hard.
Okay. Just yes or no. All right. Can we teach a horse to stand quietly for the vet using clicker training?
Yes.
Can we teach a horse to pick up all 4 feet without touching them when the farrier comes?
Yes. Not at one time, but.
Wait a minute now. I think that might be possible. Can we teach flying lead changes?
Yes.
Can we help babies, young horses, learn how to socialize or be appropriately social in turnout?
Yes.
Can we teach horses how to touch new objects?
Yes.
Can we teach horses how to, here's a good one. Can we give a horse paste dewormer without the death grip on their halter?
Yes.
Can we clean a sheath?
Yes.
Ooh, okay. What else do horses not like? Going to shows. Some of us take our horses off property, right, just to expose them to new things. So for me, one of the, I'd like to introduce my horses to fox hunting. So one of the first things we do there is we introduce the horse to hounds, pack of hounds, just running around, barking, or even in sight. Can we use a clicker training to help introduce a horse to hounds and hunting?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
And my head goes to all the scenarios. I want to say, yes, this is how it start this. This is how it start this. This is because there's always building blocks to most of the behaviors, but you can turn it all the way around so they actually love those things. So it's not just that they're tolerating it. They're like, yes, clip my ears. Yes, I like that. So it is. So you go from a, I don't like it, to a neutral, to really pretty soon they're reaching their ears forward or whatever the piece is. So it's all very doable. And like I said, this isn't something I made up. This isn't, nobody made this up or invented it. It was discovered long ago. It's just getting to the horse world now through the marine mammals. I mean, it came from textbooks to the marine mammal world, then to the dog world and the zoo world, probably zoo world first, then the dog world. And now it's getting to the horse world. So it's not made up. You're working with the principles of how they learn.
And listeners, I am evidence. I can definitely attest to the fact that my horses are so much more attentive and interested in what we're doing. And it's not just about the food. I know, Shawna, you say this all the time. I believe they get addicted to the dopamine hit, to the good hormones that get released when they're engaged in this stuff. They like the good feeling. Yes, the food comes with it, but I think what keeps them coming back for more is how good they feel during the process.
Absolutely. And they've done studies where they've given animals free food, Then they took the free food away, taught them to hit a lever for food, and then gave them both back. And what do you think they did? They tend to ignore that free food and go to the lever. There's something in there that when positive reinforcement is done well, it is not all about the food. If it is all about the food, some piece has been missing in there. Something that we have done has created that. And with the marine mammals, they got all their food each and every day, regardless of what they did or didn't do. They got all their social interactions each and every day, regardless of what they did or didn't do. So our challenge then was, well, how do we get this high criteria expectations that we're told to get? And when they can get all their food regardless, we make it fun, we make it engaging, we teach them to enjoy problem solving and doing the puzzle. And I love puzzles. So it's easy for me to relate to that. I love a crossword puzzle. But if it's too hard all the time, I'm going to be like, well, it's useless. I never get anywhere. Or if it's too easy all the time, it's useless. There's no challenge in that. So it's that art meeting the science. This is all based in science. But the art part is you need to know horses and then start to, just like you said with your horses, go, you're a little different. You're not like Susie. You're going to be maybe a little slower about how you process. And you were just going to go headlong into it without ever thinking. So trying to figure out how can you help the individual to maximize their desire to learn and be engaged in the process.
Something that did surprise me, which was stupid, that why did it surprise me, but it's straightforward, but it's not a silver bullet. You do have to work at it. You do have to work at it every day. And your horse isn't going to be the same every single day. At least my two aren't. I noticed that some days they're better at solving the puzzle. Other days they're a little slower. Some days they're more excitable. And I say to myself, "Ooh, did I do that right? Did I get the timing wrong? What do I do here?" So even though it's straightforward, you do need help. So I definitely recommend Shawna's podcast because it does take you in a linear form. But don't just go out and get yourself a clicker and make a target and think you're going to solve all your horse's problems. You do need to learn. You need to be a student yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to run into frustrations and then throw your hands up and say, I can't do this. Because that actually happened to me. You know, the fourth or fifth day I was doing this, I'm like, I thought I was so cool because my horses were so responsive. And then, of course, I hit a wall like, oh, what am I doing wrong? So just listeners, if you've tried it and you've picked up a clicker before and you thought, ugh, I can't do this. It actually is harder than I thought. It's not. Just expect that you'll hit a few obstacles, but there are resources out there to help you through them. Right, Shawna?
Yes, exactly. And it is, there's times like I will have clients call and say, it all fell apart. And I'll say, okay, well, how long has it been a problem? They're like, just today. And you're like, well,
oh my God, that's me.
You're like, just give it if it's a few days, we have a different issue. And then I check, is there something physical going on? Maybe that wasn't, is there some change in your environment? Have I not been reinforcing enough? Have I not been, I thought you had it and you didn't. But typically you get back on track, but you're going to have those days just like we do. There's days I'm like, I kind of can't think my way out of a box today, or I have a headache, or I'm just whatever it is. We all have our off days and so do they. And that's okay. And that's part of it. And I actually recommend work on something, but maybe the next time you work on something different and let that thing go for a day or so. The training will continue to grow and the latent learning, those neural pathways that are being formed from their new learning will continue to grow and get stronger. So don't drill, just kind of think, okay, we're working on the trailer, but this next couple sessions, we're going to do something else and something maybe a little funner.
And then we're going to wrap up. Now, listeners, we always kind of end our episodes by asking the guests to tell us where they can find them online. I'm not going to do that because I'm just going to provide links to all things Shawna, where you can find her book, her podcast, all of that. But I do want to ask you, Shawna, where can we follow your progress with Henley? Tell us very quickly about Henley and what you're doing with her and where we can follow your progress, because that's been a lot of fun.
Yes. And Henley is, she is 2. So she's probably almost 2.5 now. So she is a baby. She's a little warm blood and she's very well bred to be in the hunter world. So a show hunter is what she's bred for. She's showing every piece of that. She is super smart and super confident. She was bred by Jesse Hilligus, we work together. And she is amazing with giving babies such a good start. She lets them have free time in the barn. They have enough herd time and enough people time that they like all of it. They like the barn, they like the people, they like the herd, and they're well adjusted in their herd. And then, so when I lost my Murray, who was an off the track thoroughbred, he was 7, he broke his pelvis. I had already had sights on Henley, and I said, well, I think she was a yearling. I think Henley, just a yearling, I need to buy Henley now. So here comes this little horse who only knew one world, gets on a commercial vehicle and went out I was in New Mexico at the time, and she was exposed to a whole working barn, all different things. You could see forever out there. It's just very different environment, but a really good one, because it gave this confident little horse a lot to see. So she is now learning to go travel and do demos and expos and just building that confidence, preparing her for shows, so she can go to a strange world. Like she went to Equitana, which was a crazy cacophony of things going on. And she, the first day was like, whoa, what are those mountain drill team doing? But then by day 4, she's like, I love that. Let's go see it. And so it's really preparing her for all things so she can live in a diversified world and not be neophobic, not finding it scary, but finding it entertaining and environmental enrichment. So really, mostly it's on Facebook and Instagram. We put up things and talk about what she's doing. And her friend Santino, who's a year older than her.
They're so stinking cute, these two.
He really
honestly.
is. And talk about 2 different personalities. She's very smart and thoughtful and, kind of, I'll do it in my time. He's like, I just want to do it now, so he is, he's your kind of over enthusiastic gelding in there. So we'll keep posting about what we're doing and where we're taking them and what they're doing. And they're at an age where they're both coming along. She'll be about to get started with the very basics. He is now, starting to kind of move into a little bit more, just very light and very occasional ridden work. So I think the point in this progress is really important and really helpful for people to be able to follow along. So Facebook, Shawna Karrasch, and Instagram.
Okay. Well, we will be sure to post links at stallandstable.com for our listeners so they can find out how to book you for a clinic or talk to you or set up a consulting session. Shawna Karrasch, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to have you back here. I have to get my notes going, though. I'm doing all my homework. You will come back to New England, won't you?
Oh my gosh, repeatedly. I just adore you. And I love being able to share what I love and seeing what you're doing and how it's going for you too.
That was a great conversation with Shawna. She really is a wonderful, wonderful person. And I have not personally found any training technique that has been as effective and as enjoyable as positive reinforcement, as clicker training. And I've tried everything, especially in the last 2 years during COVID, when I've had to work with, two OTTBs and really didn't know what I was doing and had to learn along the way. And I've tried all sorts of things. But clicker training has been the most confidence building in me and in my horses. So I encourage you to look further into it. Put away whatever notions you may have about it and give it a try. Learn about it and give it a try. Thank you once again to our sponsors for this episode, Lucas Equine Equipment, Tangent Materials, and American Harvest Hemp Products. And remember, listeners, if you run an equine business or if you have your own farm and you need some help, you've got some questions, or you might just be stuck somewhere, feel free to give me a call or schedule an appointment for a consultation. Not only is it helpful, I promise you, it's also fun. And that's a wrap for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it.